What is going on, college basketball fans? Today we're back with more March Madness predictions. This is where we take Joe Lunardi's updated bracketology, put it into our own personal bracket, and fill it out from the first round all the way to the national championship game. And some good news and bad news when I say this. This is our last March Madness predictions before Selection Sunday, and we get our official bracket where we will be making our official bracket predictions. That video will be up on Monday, so you'll get one soon after this one. This is going to be the last one before Selection Sunday. I'm sad to have to stop making these, but I'm also excited for the official bracket to get here, for me to fill out a bunch of brackets, do all kinds of things that whole week before the games start next Thursday. Super hyped for it. I'm also going to be live streaming the Selection Sunday reveal tomorrow. As you guys are watching this, the video is going to come out on Saturday. Tomorrow on Selection Sunday, I'm going to start my stream about 30 minutes or so before the bracket gets released. We're going to react to it together, and I'm going to fill out my first couple of brackets with you guys on stream. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Make sure you guys tune in for that. And yeah, guys, let's get into this bracket predictions. So we do have our number one seed, Purdue, going up against either Grambling State or Montana State. Montana State got the bid steal in that league because Eastern Washington just choked so hard again, back-to-back years. It was insane. I think Montana State can beat Grambling State, but I'll go Purdue to win and not lose to a 16 seed back-to-back years. Then we got Boise State versus Dayton. A fun matchup. I just don't know. Like, Boise State, that's a tough matchup for them, I feel, especially in the front court, where I'm going to have to give it to Darren Holmes and the Dayton Flyers team here to move on to the round of 32. Next up, we do have South Carolina as our 5 seed versus McNeese State as our 12 seed, and I love this McNeese State team. I love this McNeese State team. I just don't know if they're actually going to be able to get one done in March. It's going to have to be the right matchup. I think they're a really fun offensive team, a team that can shoot the ball, coached there by Will Wade, and he's a good coach, but it does worry me because he has never really been able to get too far with his teams in March Madness, even at LSU. But I do think that he wins this first one against South Carolina. 12/5 already in our first region. We are going to have McNeese State move on to the round of 32, upsetting South Carolina. I think South Carolina have potential to go far. I think McNeese State is going to be a hard matchup for almost anybody, though, that draws them. You do not want to see McNeese if you are a 5 seed. I'm just going to put that out there. I love this team, and they're most likely going to be getting picked first round for me. No matter who they face, unless it's like a couple of specific teams. Next up, we do have Kansas versus VCU. VCU potentially going to get the bid steal out of the A-10. They're one of only 4 teams left. Dayton already lost. Who else? Richmond already lost. Loyola Chicago already lost in the A-10. VCU, it's either them, St. Joseph's, Duquesne, and one other team that I can't think of right now. Who was it that defeated Loyola Chicago? Was that St. Bonaventure? I'm pretty sure. One of those 4 teams getting the bid steal, and VCU is probably the best team of those teams. I just think Kansas is too... It's going to be rough for them, I don't like that they sat their best players in the Big 12 tournament. It just held them off for the NCAA tournament. I really don't like that. I mean, I can kind of understand Kevin McCullough because he's had some injuries this year, but also Hunter Dickinson stuff. So, you guys will see, they got lost. They lost early in the Big 12 tournament to Cincinnati. They're probably going to lose first round. They're frauds. I don't think so. I think Kansas is a solid squad. I love Kevin McCullough. I think that he's going to have time to heal up. As much as I hated the move, it might have been the right move for this Kansas team. And I think Kevin McCullough takes over and helps them get a win over VCU and moves on to the next round. Next up, we do have Wisconsin versus either Seton Hall or Virginia. I was actually kind of surprised to see Seton Hall get a bid here in Joe Lunardi's bracketology, given they did just lose to St. John's. in the Big East tournament. I figured that the loser of that game was not going to make it into March Madness, but of course this is not the official bracket, but Joe Lunardi is usually pretty accurate. I really don't like this Virginia team, but they are super good defensively. Your classic Virginia team. If they can keep you under 50 points, then they're probably going to win. But if you can start scoring on them, get ahead, it's hard for them to come back as well. So can Seton Hall get off to a fast start? I don't think Seton Hall is one of those teams that is going to get off to a super fast start against Virginia. So I am going to pick Virginia over Seton Hall, but then I am going to pick Wisconsin as a team that I do think can score in the front court and in the post, get to the lane. I think A.J. Storr can get to the lane on Virginia. And I do think Wisconsin is a team that can defeat Virginia and get off to a fast start against them and move on. Next up, we do have Kentucky versus Akron. I really do like this Akron team. You really got to watch out for some of these MAC teams that make the tournament, man. And I think Akron is definitely the best team in the MAC. And if they got a better matchup, I maybe could consider them getting a win as a 14 seed. But given this matchup, I like Kentucky a lot, man. Like, a lot. They are playing really good, and I know they just lost to Texas A&M tonight, but honestly, still, towards the end of the season, Kentucky's just been playing so good, man. And Texas A&M is playing with that hunger, man. Like, we've seen Texas A&M be able to compete with some really good teams over the course of the season, especially when they really need to. And they really needed to because they are a bubble team, man. And had they not beaten Kentucky, that was kind of their ticket into the big dance. So I don't really fault Kentucky too much for that one. I think Kentucky is still, playing super good ball towards the end of the year at the right time. Next up, we do have Gonzaga versus Oklahoma. That's a very fun 7-10 seed matchup right there. I like Gonzaga in this matchup, though. Oklahoma, really good. It felt like they were kind of leaning towards the bubble there for a little bit, but I think that they have a solid enough resume where they're in. I do think Gonzaga has been playing really good as of late. Yes, they did lose to St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference Championship game, but I just think Gonzaga, they're going to play their pick and roll ball. They look pretty good, and they got size. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Oklahoma. I'm going to go with Gonzaga here. Then we got Marquette versus St. Peter's, and wow, the St. Peter's Magic, man, has been insane. They just hit a buzzer beater against Quinnipiac, who is the favorite to win that league tournament, and now they're heading into the MAAC championship game. I mean, it is insane, and I really hope that they make the tournament. However, I don't think they're going to be able to beat Marquette. St. Peter's, is a very good defensive team. I think that they could maybe keep it close throughout the first half with Marquette, but I do think Cam Jones is a guy who is going to score a lot and be able to shoot lights out against the St. Peter's team. This is not the same St. Peter's team as a couple of years ago. They're going to need some crazy magic to win this one. I do have Marquette winning this one. Next up, we got Purdue versus Dayton. And Darren Holmes versus Zach Edey would be a fun matchup to watch. Yes, please. This is what I like to look for in my brackets. I like to see the storylines. I want to see something like this in the second round. I think it would be a ton of fun. I do think Purdue does get the win. However, I think this is a close game. Dayton is going to play this one super close, and it is going to come down to the wire. I could see it coming down to Dayton having the opportunity to maybe tie the game with a 3 or a 2, and they just miss barely, or they just miss they get a good look and just miss, and Purdue is able to advance. That's kind of the vibes I'm getting right now from this game, and I would love that. I would love to see it, man. Then we got McNeese State versus Kansas, and I would love to keep picking McNeese. I just don't know if I trust this team to go too much further past the first round unless they get some better matchups. I do think McNeese does have Sweet 16 potential, but going up against Kansas, I think it's going to be too much of a tall task for them. I am going to pick the Jayhawks here to move on to the Sweet 16. Then we do have Wisconsin versus Kentucky, and this one is fun because I think that Kentucky, they're starting to play a little bit better on defense, and that is going to be huge, especially because they have such a good rim protector that they found now. And Reed Shepherd has really come into his own. Rob Dillingham has been playing awesome. And you got some veterans like Trey Mitchell, Antonio Reeves, who is going to, they're going to step up their defense come March Madness. They're going to be playing super hard, man. And I think Kentucky is going to be able to get past Wisconsin. I do think Wisconsin, they do rely on their front court to score a lot. And I'm not going to sit here and act like Kentucky's defense is all of a sudden awesome, because it's not. But they did find a rim protector here on this team who is a 7-footer, and it definitely makes a difference and definitely helps them in a matchup like this against Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Kentucky, always a good matchup ever since, that historic Final Four matchup where that was one of the best, college basketball games of all time. So these two programs forever intertwined, and we want to see this matchup in the second round. But I do think Kentucky does win it this time, unlike that last time in the Final Four, and moves on. I just think too much offense. I mean, Wisconsin does have some offensive scorers like A.J. Storr, who can shoot the ball. They got Chucky, who can score the ball. I just think that Kentucky, too many scores, too many guys who can score the rock, too much talent. They just need to clean up the defense, and they can go super, super far in this tournament. Next up, we do have Gonzaga versus Marquette. A fun game here. Mark Few versus Shaka Smart. A fun coaching matchup. Mark Few has had more success in March Madness as far as going deep. Shaka Smart has not been past the second round since made the Final Four with VCU. And he's been coaching two different teams since then. Texas and Marquette now. So is this finally the year Marquette can make it past the first weekend of March Madness? I think it is. I think it is here. I think Gonzaga, when they're playing their best, they can probably beat a lot of really good teams. I think Marquette's hungry this year. I think Tyler Kolek and Cam Jones, one of the better veteran backcourts in college basketball, and they've also improved since last year, especially Cam Jones. He's really, really improved and looking awesome. Iguodaro down low is not going to, just let Graham Ike just score all over him, for sure. And yeah, I like Marquette in this matchup. And yeah, let's move on to our Sweet 16 matchups. I know I do have the top 4 seeds in this region making it out to the Sweet 16, but trust me, if you know my channel, I do not chalk a lot on this channel, so things will be different here soon. So hold your horses. Let's go. Next up, we do have Purdue versus Kansas, and honestly, I do feel like Kansas has been one of those teams that they play really good up until they play some really good teams. And I know that they do have some really good wins over teams like UConn and Houston, who are two of the better teams in college basketball. You could argue the two best teams in college basketball, but those were both in Allen Fieldhouse. And I do feel like on a neutral court, I just don't know if Kansas has the depth to keep up with Purdue. I mean, you got DeJuan Harris, who is a veteran. I feel like he is going to turn it up in March Madness for sure, but Braden Smith has really improved this year, and he is a very good playmaker in himself. Then they picked up Lance Jones, who has been such a key piece. Fletcher Lawyer. I do think that Kansas can beat Purdue, and we all know the key matchup here is going to be Hunter Dickinson versus Zach Edey. And of course, Kevin McCullough is going to play a huge role in this one. I think Purdue is beatable here. I think Kansas can beat Purdue. However, I do think Purdue gets past them. I think Purdue does get past them. It's going to be a very good game. I think close, but Purdue's been super good this year. I'm going to trust them to get past Kansas here in this one. Then we do have Kentucky versus Marquette. This one's interesting. I think high scoring. I don't think either of these teams are going to be playing that great a defense. And it is going to be one for the books for sure. I think that Reed Shepherd is going to be huge down the stretch of this game. And I am going to have Kentucky win this one over Marquette, 3 over a 2 seed. Nothing crazy, 3-2. They're very close, but Kentucky playing very good basketball lately. I have them moving on past Purdue, or past Marquette, to the Elite Eight. Then we do have our Elite Eight matchup, and we do have Purdue versus Kentucky. And is that newfound rim protection going to... it is definitely going to be tested here in this game against Zach Edey. And I just think, they're not going to stop Zach Edey. Can they slow him down, though? Yes, they can. And I do honestly believe that Kentucky might have more scorers all around as a team than Purdue. And if they do get out ahead and score a lot of points early, Purdue, we've seen them panic before. And I think that they could panic in that situation. You want to talk about teams get tested, especially when you're the number 1 overall seed coming in. I'm going to compare this team to Virginia back in 2018-2019 because they both lost to a 16 seed, and they're both expected to have, high odds to win the national championship the following year. Virginia did win it. Let's take back to Virginia's Elite Eight game, ironically, against Purdue. What happened, man? Virginia was getting down in that game. Carson Edwards was going crazy. Virginia did not panic, though. They did not panic, and they ended up winning that game. It was a close one. Very, very close. One of the best games in recent memory for me. Absolute amazing game. But I don't know if Purdue is going to have that type of ability to stay calm and be able to come back if they get down early. I think Kentucky gets up early and they don't look back. Purdue is definitely going to make some runs, but I think they panic and they try to do too much too fast, and they are unable to complete the comeback against Kentucky, and Kentucky Wildcats are heading to the Final Four for the first time in a little while. Next up, we do have our next region where North Carolina is our 1 seed here, and they will be going up against Norfolk State, where I do have UNC moving on. RJ Davis going to have a huge game. Armando Bacot, Cormac Ryan has been playing amazing as well. North Carolina moving on. Next up, we do have FAU versus TCU. A very fun matchup. Another 8-9 matchup for FAU that is just going to be an amazing game. A lot like last year where they had Memphis. It was an amazing game, came down to the wire. I think this one will as well. I think that I trust FAU a little bit more in this one, and I am going to have the Owls move on to the round of 32, where this time they won't get to face a 16 seed. They'll have to face the actual 1 seed. Going to be a little bit of a harder path for them this time. Next up, we do have South Florida as our 12 seed going up against BYU. And I love this BYU team, man. And as much as I do like South Florida, it's actually seeming like they're going to have to win the American to get a bid. Like, it seems like everybody's talking about FAU is the only at-large coming out of the American, and South Florida is going to have to win the league. So I'm not sure if they're going to do that. I'm not even sure if they're going to be in March Madness. If they are going to be a very dangerous team. But I think I like BYU in this matchup either way. They're an amazing offense, amazing shooting team when they're on. And give me the Cougars here to get a win. Next up, we do have Illinois versus Samford. And as much as I like this Illinois team, I hate the matchup for them. I love the Samford team. You guys know I do. And I'm sorry for Illinois fans, but I am picking Samford. I mean, I like the Samford team a ton, and I actually think this is a good matchup for them. Even though I believe Illinois does have Sweet 16 and possibly Elite 8 upside, I feel so bad picking these upsets because I know a ton of fan bases are like want to see their team go far in my predictions videos, but not every team can. And I just feel like this is a bad matchup for Illinois. Samford gets a ton of turnovers, and they turn the ball over a lot as well, but they press all game long. They shoot a lot of threes. They shoot early. They want to be in a track race the entire game. And I think that Illinois could be turnover prone in this game. I think it's going to be, it could be enough for them to get a first round upset. And I am picking Samford to upset Illinois. My first big upset of this video, a 13-4, Samford moving on. Next up, we do have Nevada versus James Madison. This is another spot where I'm potentially looking at an upset. I mean, James Madison has 30 wins on this season, and they look really, really good. I just don't know if I trust them against Nevada because I like this Nevada team a lot, but I do think that guys like Jared Lucas, Keenan Blackshear could have some bad games, and I don't necessarily know if I trust Nevada like just as a whole to make a deep run right here. I am going to go with another upset, and I am going to go with James Madison to defeat Nevada in round one. And Nevada's another team. I could see them go far. But this region, I see a lot of potential for chaos and a lot of really good mid-majors. And this is probably going to be my chaos region. I'm just going to give you all a warning. Next up, we do have Baylor versus Oakland. And this is another one where I could honestly potentially see an upset. Oakland is a team that has been very, very hot as of late, but Baylor is no slouch. They are a very disciplined team. They have some veterans on this team in Jalen Bridges, Ray J. Dennis. They got a stud freshman in Jacoby Walter. They're not going to be an easy out whatsoever, and realistically, I don't think I can pick Oakland, even though I really, really want to. I am going to pick the Baylor Bears here to move on to the next round. Next up, we do have Florida versus Drake, and Florida is another team that I could potentially see go far in this tournament, especially as a 7 seed. I like them as a 7 or a 6 a lot. I think a 7 or a 6 this year, if you get the right matchups, you could go far. You could go far in this tournament. I usually like the 7s, the 10s, the 6s, the 11s. Those are some of my favorite upset seeds to kind of pick, and Florida's right in that range, and I think they do have potential to go far. However, I think Drake is the better team, and I think Drake is going to win this game. It is not just Tucker DeVries. It is Darnell Brody down low. It is Wright. They have some great guards on this team, and Darnell Brody is a great big. He's really come into his own the last little bit of this season. Outplayed Robbie Avila in the Missouri Valley Championship game, and yeah, Drake's looking really, really good, and they made the tournament last year. Didn't work out. I think that they're better this year. I think they're going to get at least one win, maybe even more, and Drake is moving on to the round of 32. Next up, we do have Arizona versus South Dakota State, where I am going to have Arizona win this game and move on to the round of 32. No real problem there with South Dakota State. Arizona did lose to a 15 seed last year, but I don't think they do that again. Next, we do have North Carolina versus FAU. I'm not going to lie, I did consider picking FAU. I do think that they have pretty good defense that can slow down this North Carolina offense. I just feel like somebody is going to be able to step up enough for this North Carolina team. It's probably going to be RJ Davis, could be Cormac Ryan, could be Harrison Ingram. You cannot leave out Harrison Ingram when talking about this North Carolina team because he has such a huge role for this team, and I got to go with North Carolina. I got to go with North Carolina here in this one. They're too good. I think that they're too good for FAU. They move on. Then we got BYU versus Samford, and as much as I would love to keep going on with Samford, I just think BYU protects the ball more. They have really good depth. The press is not going to tire out BYU. And they have really good ball handlers as well, and really good shooting and an offense that can keep up with Samford's pace. So for those reasons, I think it is a good matchup for BYU, and it is going to be a good game. It is going to be a shootout, but I think BYU is fine. They're comfortable in those type of games, and they have a lot of depth, and that's why I like BYU here in that matchup. I am picking the Cougs to move on to the Sweet 16. Next up, we do have James Madison versus Baylor, and this is another one I could see an upset happening here. I don't know. Baylor's just so disciplined, so experienced. It's just hard to pick against them here, and I just don't know if they're actually going to be able to defeat Baylor, but I think that they can, and that's enough for me right now because I love to pick these upsets, and I'm picking James Madison to defeat Baylor here and make it to the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed. Next up, we do have Drake versus Arizona. That is going to be a super fun matchup. Omar Ballo versus Brody down low is going to be a treat. That is going to be a physical center matchup that I need to see. How are they going to try to defend Tucker DeVries? Will be definitely interesting, but then the Caleb Love factor, the Kylan Boswell factor. I think Drake plays good enough defense. They play great all-around ball, honestly, offensively and defensively. I like Drake in this game, and I'm picking Drake here to upset the 2 seed in this region. Next up, we do have North Carolina versus BYU, and this is a fun 1 versus 5 matchup where this is very interesting. I might like BYU in this matchup. Now, if you look at it on paper, you may think North Carolina definitely has the better players, but BYU as a team play really, really good. And like I said, they have a lot of depth. They have a lot of players. I think they have 7 players on their team that average at least 9 points a game. They have a ton of players on their team that shoot over 40% from 3. And they have shown that they can beat top teams. They beat Kansas and Allen Fieldhouse. Although they didn't have Kevin McCullar, I still think BYU definitely has a chance to defeat North Carolina. I'm not saying that they would be the favorites or should be the favorites to defeat North Carolina, anything like that. But I think BYU can beat them if they're on, playing their best, shooting the lights out. They can knock off North Carolina, and I'm going to have the Cougars move on to the Elite 8. And they will be playing either our 11-seeded James Madison Dukes or our 10-seeded Drake Bulldogs. What a region this is going to be. I absolutely love it. Now, James Madison versus Drake is interesting. Straight up, I'm going to give it to you. I have Drake winning that matchup against James Madison. I just think Drake is such a solid team, the way that they play. Great offensively, great defensively. They can shoot when they need to. They have a go-to scorer in Tucker DeVries. They have some physical guys. They have good leadership at the guard position with Wright. I just like this Drake team a ton, and they are moving on to the Elite 8 as a 10 seed. So, to make it to the Final Four, we do have BYU, we do have Drake, 2 teams that do have just pretty good offenses, teams that have pretty good depth, and teams that have definitely earned their spots with some upsets to get to this position. And I'm going to keep moving with Drake. Why not? They're on a roll right now. BYU could have an off shooting night or just not as good of a shooting night. And that would be perfect for North Carolina to be wow, of course BYU shoots like the best basketball team of all time against us, and then just absolutely builds a house against Drake in the Elite 8. It would be perfect. And that is how Drake winds up with good basketball as well in the Final Four as a 10 seed in my Cinderella for this bracket. Now we head into our next region where we do have UConn as our number one seed here, and they will be going up against Longwood. As much as I would love to see Longwood and Morehead State in the Elite 8 here, it would just absolutely get me going. I am going to go with UConn here to knock off Longwood here in the first round. UConn is, in my opinion, they may be the best team in college basketball. Just the way their offense moves, their ball movement. I don't know if they're for sure the best team in college basketball. Purdue is pretty well-rounded. Houston is the best defensive team. UConn may be the best. I think UConn might be the best offensive team. You know, they may not be there all the way with the rankings, but if you watch this team play, there's no offense quite like UConn's. They're going to be a tough out. No matter what, you can count on that. They will be a tough out. So, now we do have Nebraska versus Texas. Interesting matchup. You know, they both can get hot. They both can have some bad games. But to go along with my trend, even though I love Max Abmas, I'm going along with these good three-point shooting teams to have good nights. And I think Nebraska can have a good night shooting against Texas. I'm going to have the Huskers move on to the second round. Next up, we do have Washington State as our 5 seed going up against Princeton as our 12 seed. And I don't really know if I like Princeton here in this matchup. I think Washington State, very athletic, very lengthy. But Princeton has shown that they can beat a good Pac-12 team in the first round like they did last year against Arizona. I like Washington State here in this matchup, though. I am going to go with them to move on. Next up, we do have Auburn versus Charleston. And again, I think Charleston could do it, but Auburn, another really good defensive team, a team that has a lot of physical, hard players. I like them to move on. Next up, we do have St. Mary's versus St. John's, Battle of the Saints. And this is honestly a fun one where I am going to probably go ahead and take the upset in St. John's. I just think St. Mary's plays a brand of basketball where I could see them losing. I just, if they get the right matchup, I think Rick Pitino is going to have such a good game plan for them, and the way that they've been playing lately, I feel like they can knock off a team or two, and I'm going to have St. John's go ahead here and knock off St. Mary's and move on to the next round. Next up, we do have Duke versus Vermont. The Catamounts just stay making it to the big dance and losing in the first round. I think that's exactly what they do again this year. Duke moves on as they knock off Vermont. I mean, Duke just too good, man. Just too good. Next up, we do have Utah State versus Mississippi State. And this is just an absolute robbery. I mean, how is Utah State only a 7 seed? How? I honestly don't get it. Like, I do understand they didn't play that great of a non-con schedule, but Utah State needs to be a 5 seed. Utah State needs to be a 5 seed, and if they were, I think that they would be a Sweet 16 team. But Mississippi State has been playing really good, and I do really like this team a lot to potentially go far, and Josh Hubbard is a guy who just is a beast. I could see him. He's clutch, going hard down the stretch of this tournament, or down the stretch of these games, at least in this first one against Utah State. And yeah, give me Mississippi State to move on. Next up, we do have Iowa State versus Western Kentucky. Give me Iowa State. I did have Iowa State lose first round in my last bracket as a 2 seed in a massive upset, but against Western Kentucky, I don't really see it happening, and Iowa State is just such a good team. Not going to have them lose yet that early again. Next up, we do have UConn versus Nebraska. Nebraska is a really good shooting team. If they're playing their absolute best, it is possible they could squeak out this upset, but 95% of the time at least, I'm taking UConn in this matchup. Just too good. Just too good, man. Too good offensively. They're good defensively as well. Give me UConn. Then we got Washington State versus Auburn in a 4 versus 5 matchup. That is going to be an amazing game. Two teams that are great defensively. I honestly don't know who would come out on top. I think I trust Auburn here in this game. Just they're so back and forth, whether they win by a lot, they lose by a lot. I think this is a game they could definitely get out in front and win by a lot, and Washington State would have a tougher time coming back. So I am going to pick Auburn here to move on. Next up, we do have St. John's versus Duke. Would love to see this storyline play out in the second round. Would love to see Rick Pitino go up against Duke once again. Would be an awesome storyline. I would love to take St. John's in this game. I just don't know if they have the talent to do so. I mean, Kyle Filipowski is a beast. Jared McCain is a beast. You got Jeremy Roach, who is a veteran point guard. Tyrese Proctor playing great. I got to take Duke. Sadly, I do have to take Duke here in that matchup. Then we do have Mississippi State versus Iowa State. And yeah, I think Mississippi State does have a shot here. And I know I picked Iowa State to lose early last one, but I have them around further this time. I think Iowa State has potential. I'm just going to say this because I know Iowa State fans are going to be like, what the hell? But I'm going to say this. You guys have potential to make the Final Four. I don't think you guys have national championship potential. But I think Iowa State has potential to make the Final Four, given the right matchups. I just like this Mississippi State team a lot, the way they're playing right now. They just beat Tennessee today. Josh Hubbard is a guy who can take over March Madness. Tolu Smith down low could cause problems for Iowa State. I got to take Mississippi State here to move on to the Sweet 16. Let's go. Next up, we do have UConn versus Auburn. And I am going to go ahead and take UConn here to beat Auburn. I just think that they are a team that can score on Auburn's defense. They are a team that can keep up with them, and they're a team that I believe are just going to honestly outscore Auburn and beat them down pretty hard. I mean, Auburn has shown when they go up against really, really good teams, they just cannot compete. And I think Sweet 16 here, if they do have to meet up against a team like UConn or one of the better teams in college basketball, they might get creamed. And I don't know if they'll get creamed, but I think they lose by 10 or 12 points at least. Next up, we do have Duke versus Mississippi State, man. That's going to be a good matchup. I mean, I could honestly see this one going either way. Mississippi State gets hot. They start knocking off a few teams. All of a sudden, they're in the Sweet 16 with some momentum. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to have them pull off another upset. Mississippi State on a roll. I think that they could do it, man. I like Chris Jans a lot as a head coach. I think that he has them playing really good defense along with these really good players, and he has good ball movement. And if his team is making threes, which I think is the big question mark probably for Mississippi State, especially down the stretch, I like Mississippi State as a sleeper this year. And they make it to the Elite Eight as a 10 seed here in this one. Next up, we have UConn versus Mississippi State. And sadly, Mississippi State did knock off the 2 and the 3 seed in this region. But that is where their run is going to have to come to an end because UConn is just a different type of animal. And yeah, veteran point guard in Tristan Newton, who just won a national title. Veteran power forward in Alex Caravan, who just won a national title. Donovan Clingan was coming off the bench for Sonogo last year, but he just won a national title. You name it, man. They have studs. Stephon Castle coming up. Cam Spencer, who has taken over that Jordan Hawkins role for this team, just running around, shooting threes, and drilling them with... You have to have somebody just chase him around. That's going to use a lot of energy. I just don't think Mississippi State. I don't think I think it's possible they can make this little bit of a run, beat Iowa State, Duke. You know, those are beatable teams. UConn, I draw the line there. But it's a good run, a good story for Mississippi State, man. Next up, we have our last region. Then we get to our Final Four matchups. We do have Houston as our 1 seed, and they will be going up against a really fun 16 seed, really the story of 16 seeds this year, in my opinion. In Stetson, they have a player who's been dropping 40 in their league tournament, and Yeah, that's not happening against Houston. Come on now. I mean, they have the best defense in college basketball. They are shutting that down. Stetson is not beating Houston. Houston impressed me so much tonight with that win against Texas Tech. I mean, they just look so good. So good, man. Especially in that second half, I was like, yeah, Houston is for real. Northwestern versus Colorado State. This one could go either way. This would be an insane first-round matchup between Isaiah Stevens and Boo Buie. Everybody wants to see that. I know as soon as I saw that matchup, I immediately was like, wow, who is going to win that point guard battle? Is it going to be the veteran Boo Buie? Is it going to be the other veteran in Isaiah Stevens? And I haven't really been picking too many Mountain West teams to win first round, which sucks because the Mountain West has been so good. I think Colorado State can win this one, and I'll pick them here to get past Northwestern. Next up, we do have San Diego State versus Grand Canyon. This is definitely a 12-5 that I am looking at to potentially pick. But Grand Canyon has not been playing that great lately. The only thing is Grand Canyon beat San Diego State earlier this year, and they have proven that they can do it. And they have a stud player on their team. I just don't know if they can beat San Diego State again, especially this time they won't be at home. They'll be on a neutral court. I think San Diego State plays pretty good in rematches. I think it'll be close, but I am going to pick San Diego State here to stay alive and move on to the round of 32. Next up, we have Alabama versus UC Irvine. I would love to see a UC Irvine upset here. They've shown that they can do it again before. I think Alabama is a beatable team, but they're really, really good on offense. I think Mark Sears is the guy to look out for. For sure, I'm going to take Bama here to move on to the next round. I mean, Mark Sears is a guy who could legitimately, I don't hear a lot of people talking about him as a potential guy to do this, but he could take over March Madness and just shoot the lights out and go on a deep run. Definitely, especially if they get the right matchups. Next up, we have Texas Tech versus either Colorado or Texas A&M. I like Texas Tech here in both of these matchups, I think. I think A&M beats Colorado. Even though I do like Colorado and some of these players, A&M's playing good right now. When they get hungry, they could, they had high expectations this year. They almost disappointed and missed the whole tournament. Buzz Williams, I just don't know. I don't know if I trust them. They always seem to play good in the SEC tournament. But then when they get to March Madness, I don't know what happens. I'll have them beat Colorado in that last four-in game, but then I am going to have Texas Tech beat them. I just think, honestly, I don't trust Buzz Williams. I like McGasland for Texas Tech a lot. I think he's a good coach, and I think Texas Tech is definitely a team that plays really good defense, of course, and they can also shoot the ball pretty well, and they can find offense in a lot of different ways, especially against a team like A&M. So give me Texas Tech in that one. Creighton versus Morehead State. I like Creighton. Morehead State, like I said earlier, if I was going to give a 14 seed a win, I think it would be Vermont, Akron, even Oakland. I like Oakland. I don't think Oakland's getting a win, but it would probably be Akron, Vermont. I don't see Morehead State being able to get one done. Creighton's really, really good. Next up, we got Clemson versus Michigan State. Clemson, really good in the non-con this year. Michigan State, it seems like they're never consistent enough, even though they had such high expectations this year. But Tom Izzo, always good in March Madness. You can't usually count him out. It is going to be definitely tough to pick against them here. But Clemson is a very good team, man. Clemson is a very, very good team. And I could see them being able to do it. Tom Izzo in March, I got to pick them at least round one here. Give me Michigan State here to move on. Then we do have Tennessee versus Colgate. And is this finally the year Colgate can get a first round win? I mean, if you're playing any 2 seed, you want to play Tennessee. I mean, Arizona kind of has shown to be able to choke early as well. Definitely a couple of these 2 seeds are not making it further than the second round or Sweet 16. Tennessee just lost pretty bad to Mississippi State, and Rick Barnes is in March form. I can't pick Colgate as much as I really, really want to. I got to pick Tennessee. I mean, maybe that loss early in the SEC tournament kind of opened their eyes a little bit, potentially. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. I just think Dalton Knecht is just too good, man, and he could drop 40 in that game. Like, he's capable of dropping 40 any given night, and yeah, but also Tennessee is capable of only dropping 50 as a team on any given night, so it's scary to pick them. It's scary. Houston versus Colorado State. Again, Colorado State very dependent on Isaiah Stevens. They do have other players who can shoot the ball, play make, but Houston's defense, are they going to be able to do all that? I honestly don't think so. I think Houston too good. They move on. San Diego State versus Alabama. Offense versus defense would be a treat to watch. I don't know if I trust San Diego State, honestly, in this one. I think that Bama does have the pieces to be able to defeat a San Diego State. Aaron Estrada is another player with Mark Sears who can play some really good games offensively and defensively. Grant Nelson, a very solid player. Grant Nelson versus Jaden Ledee is the matchup here, and I am going to take Alabama. No, I'm going with San Diego State. I think their defense will be able to do enough. Trammell, Jaden Ledee, you name it, man. They have so many great defenders, and they're experienced. Give me the Aztecs to move on. 5 over the 4. Next up, we have Texas Tech versus Creighton. That would be an awesome matchup. I think it would be close, high scoring. I think that the matchups are definitely interesting. I think Stephen Ashworth, Trey Alexander going up against Pop Isaacs and Joe Toussaint. Interesting. Joe Toussaint, I tell you, as a WVU fan, very good defender. But also, I love Joe Toussaint as a WVU fan, but also can turn the ball over quite a bit in some situations. I just think, especially with Trey Alexander being there, and I don't know who's going to be able to handle Baylor Shireman, and Ryan Cockburner is also down low playing great defense, so the paint isn't going to be open. I like Creighton a lot in this matchup. Give me the Blue Jays to move on. Next up, we have Michigan State versus Tennessee. I don't trust any of these. I don't trust either one of these teams to go far. But if you give me Rick Barnes versus Tom Izzo, I'm taking Tom Izzo to get that win. Give me Michigan State all day. Tom Izzo in March, Rick Barnes in March. Completely opposites. And as much as Dalton Knecht wants to carry Rick Barnes on his back and give him a little bit of a run, not happening. Give me Michigan State to move on here. As much as I think Michigan State has been so inconsistent this year, they were last year as well. And what did they do? Made the Sweet 16 by defeating a 2 seed. And this is a clear one that could happen. I just don't know. I think A.J. Hoggard could go off. I think Tyson Walker could go off. I think some of these really good, I think guys like Malik Hall, Xavier Booker out of nowhere, if he can start playing better. Sissoko starts playing really good defense down low versus Tennessee. I really do think Michigan State can win this game. I think Dalton Knecht does have a good game. Malik Hall's got to play a great defensive game, though. Try to slow him down. Sparty moves on to the Sweet 16. Houston versus San Diego State. 2 very good defensive teams, but Houston just on another level this year. I don't see them. I think this is finally the year, honestly, that they go really far. They've been good, so good year after year. Jamal Shedd is such a good veteran presence on this team. You got Jawan Roberts, who is such a good veteran forward on this team. You got so many guys who can shoot the three and play great defense. It is just Kelvin Sampson is farming up defensive players right now. It is amazing. This team is experienced. This team is hungry. They want to go further this year. Houston gets past San Diego State, moves on to the Elite Eight. Then we got Creighton versus Michigan State, and this is where Michigan State's run is going to come to an end. I just think Creighton, too good, man. Offensively, especially, I just think Baylor Shireman is going to be a problem for them, but they could play a similar game plan to him that they did Dalton Knecht. That is 100% true, but I think that Creighton plays a defense that I think I just trust them more in March, honestly, to execute than Tennessee. And yeah, it honestly really does come back to that. Creighton making back-to-back Elite Eights and their second Elite Eight in school history. How about that? And they're going to have opportunity to make their first Final Four in school history once again this year. Houston versus Creighton. It would be an amazing matchup. But again, I think this is Houston's year that they make the Final Four. I'm taking the Cougars here to move on. They have the depth. They have the defense. They have the leadership, the veteran point guard. Again, just the defense, man. Number one defense in the country. They're playing outstanding right now. Give me the Cougars in the Final Four. So, our Final Four is set. Kentucky, our 3 seed, going up against Drake, our 10 seed. UConn, our 1 seed, versus Houston, our 1 seed. Let's go. These are going to be fun. All right, so we do have our Final Four matchups. Let's start over here with our Kentucky versus Drake matchup. Can the Drake Bulldogs out of Des Moines, Iowa, make it to the national championship game? Tucker DeVries playing for his dad, who is his head coach, and Darian DeVries. Brody down low, you got Wright at point guard, you got some depth on this team, you got a very good, solid, all-around team that has been playing excellent. I think that they will play a good close game versus Kentucky, and I could actually see them winning at halftime of this game, and then just Kentucky going on an absolute tear and coming back. I just think that guys like, oh my God, I just think Reed Shepherd is about to have such an amazing NCAA tournament run, along with Antonio Reeves, Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner could play some great games in the March Madness tournament. You got great paint protection with Anesso. I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Well, probably am pronouncing it wrong. I think I'm pronouncing it right. In Anesso, who is down low with some paint protection. Trey Mitchell is a power forward who can stretch the full floor. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a West Virginia fan. I know Trey Mitchell very, very well. He is an excellent, excellent player. And he will play hard on defense too, especially in these situations. And I think that their defense is just going to improve as they gain momentum in the March Madness tournament, knowing the season is on the line, knowing they have such great athletes on their team. I think their defense is going to improve, and I'm going to take Kentucky here in this game. Give me the Wildcats here to move on. Next up, we have UConn versus Houston, 2 1 seeds. I believe the 2 best teams in college basketball. You could argue Purdue. They've been a wagon this year. They could definitely win the national championship. I had them win it in my last bracket predictions video. But I think UConn and Houston might be the 2 best teams in college basketball. The best offense versus the best defense. And it's crazy because I do think that Houston somewhat reminds me of 2021 Baylor, where they had the great guards in Butler, Davian Mitchell. The only thing about Houston, yes, they have 3 really, really, really good guards: Jamal Shed, Emmanuel Sharp, L.J. Cryer. Amazing guard trio, man, amazing. And they do have good front court, like Juwan Roberts. They got Francis. They got really good players. The only problem with Roberts and Francis, they cannot stretch the floor. I think that could be, their downfall. It could be here in the Final Four. It could be in the national championship game. It could be earlier in the tournament. I just don't know if I think Houston can win the championship without a forward who can stretch the floor a little bit better. But they have won the Big 12 regular season. They're playing outstanding in the Big 12 tournament right now. They've had just an amazing season overall, where they haven't needed that really. So I don't know. I just feel like UConn, where you got guys like Alex Caravan, you got some deep depth on this team, you got a veteran point guard who is going to be playmaking and playing his butt off in Tristan Newton. I do give the guard matchups to Houston as far as the advantage, which kind of makes me want to pick Houston, but I just think in the front court with Klingon, Alex Caravan who can stretch the floor. Houston is amazing defensively. They could get into foul... But they could even get into foul trouble or something. I just think I trust UConn more in this matchup right now. I am going to go with the Huskies to knock off Houston and make it to the national championship game for the second year in a row. Now for our national championship game. Great matchup, man. Great matchup. The guards in this game are going to be amazing. The prospects, NBA prospects, are going to be going wild in this game. You got Reed Shepherd, Reeves, you got Rob Dillingham, of course. You got so many solid players. DJ Wagner on Kentucky. Then on UConn, you got Stephon Castle, Tristan Newton. You got Cam Spencer. You got so many good players. Like, this is insane. I just think, even though Kentucky's been playing better defensively, like I've said, this whole tournament, it's going to be a different game against UConn. UConn, like I mentioned, they have the best ball movement, the best set offense under Dan Hurley in all of college basketball. And for Kentucky, who has struggled on defense for most of this season, I just think it is a bad matchup for them. I do think Kentucky has potential to win the national championship. I just think if they get matched up against a team like UConn, or honestly even Houston, I just don't see them doing too good. And I think that is where their season will end, is whenever they match up against either a UConn or a Houston or a team that can do something like that to them. Matchup-wise, I like the leadership of Tristan Newton. I like the ball movement of UConn, and I think Danny Hurley wins back-to-back championships as a head coach. The first coach to do it since Billy Donovan at Florida. And yeah, UConn is your back-to-back March Madness national champions. Let me know what you guys think about this bracket. I kind of like it a lot. We have our Cinderella and Drake coming out as a 10 seed. We have Kentucky as a 3 seed, who I think is an amazing 3 seed, who's hot right now. We got the two best teams in college basketball, in my opinion, UConn and Houston, all making it to the Final Four. We have another good Cinderella run in Mississippi State. We have some good storylines along the way as well. BYU having a nice fun run. Creighton making back-to-back Elite Eights. Tom Izzo making another Sweet 16. A lot of really good stuff here in this tournament bracket. I like it a lot. And yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comment section. Subscribe for more college basketball content. And like I mentioned earlier, tomorrow on Selection Sunday, we will be live reacting to it. The official bracket being revealed. And if you guys do want to join my March Madness ESPN Tournament Challenge group, I will leave a link for that down in the description and maybe pin it in the comment section as well, so you guys can join that. We already got like 100 people in there. It's also on my community tab, the link as well. So look around for it. You'll find it if you guys want to join. And yeah, we'll be live tomorrow, Selection Sunday. Our official March Madness bracket predictions will be out Monday, the day after Selection Sunday, and a ton more March Madness content coming your way. So that's going to do it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm out.